Hello, hello. Let me do my final wrap up on The West Beyond the West by Gene Barman, History of British Columbia, a book that was written in 19 history book that was written in 1991 and then was revised in 1996 in the paperback edition. So there's a little bit of added on to get us all the way up to 1995. And I think, with most history books of places, when you get up to the very, very present, is where it probably ages the worst. It's the most wobbly. And I think that is the case with this one. Barman does a good job of sort of summing up recent events going from 1972. I think the last chapter is like 1970, not the last chapter, but the last chapter where we're getting kind of the meat and potatoes kind of history is it New Dynamic? It's probably the New Dynamic, which is 1972 to 1995, which is sort of Dave Barrett of the NDP getting in briefly for a thing, the economic downturn, getting the son of Wacky Bennett, W.A.C. Bennett, Bill Bennett, in for a while, and then the final kind of dissolving kind of end of the Social Credit Party that W.A.C. Bennett was the big holder upper of. That kind of coalition. We have kind of a little bit of the chaos of the kind of the liberals and the conservatives. Liberals under Gordon Wilson kind of coming up the middle. Gordon Wilson. My memory. See, we get into kind of living memory and my memories of, a leaders' debate where the NDP were shouting on this side and the social creds were shouting on this side, and Gordon Wilson standing in the middle going, "Aren't you just tired of both of these jokers, both of these sides? We're not getting anything done. We just have these two sides yelling at each other," which really resonated. Unfortunately, while he really caught the zeitgeist and expressed that, and as a result, the Socreds sort of went poof out. He himself wasn't that great of a leader. There was he ended out, and another Gordon Campbell came in. And that is that kind of forged that new kind of center right coalition that held sway for a good long time until they too just sort of, I think, what happens in BC is parties get in power and they stay in power until people just get so tired of them, and the kind of whatever inevitable scandals and mess ups kind of or just fatigue with seeing the same face sets on, and finally they get turfed. And at the moment we're in a little NDP pocket for however long we're in it. I think I probably noted in the last one that we do get that whole thing of it's a very 90s book in the sense of I like myself growing up, as we were kind of educated to say, hey, people were racist in the past, but we've gotten past that now and racism is over, which was a very comforting, complacent, easy thing for white Canadians to tell themselves. That thankfully seems to have crumbled, but you can tell this book is still sort of in the midst of that, of slightly minimizing. We get into the British Columbia identity, which Barman says, yeah, it's complicated. So many different regions, like geographically, economically, socially. But she includes Leonard George saying like, oh, British Columbia is nearest to kind of Eden that we've had. And it's like as kind of the native component of identity in British Columbia. Whereas I wonder how many natives today, if you ask them, would say A, that they were Canadian, or B, that they were British Columbian. They would probably actually know much more, say that they are of a particular tribe within this political construct that has been imposed over top of them, but they don't actually consider themselves a part of. So yeah, it will be interesting going from this to a much more recent book by Gene Barman, essays on gender, space, and the race in the colonization of British Columbia. Like, how significantly will she have set aside sort of the, not what I would consider like kind of 90s ideology of this book, written 26 years ago, almost 30 if you just count like the initial run, and this one, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see that. I mean, I think it's valuable in a way. I mean, for me, it's British Columbia. There's not like tons of like accessible, readable histories that get pushed out. So this is probably my best bet as something to read of just an overview of British Columbian history. I tried George Bowring's one, and I found it a little overflowery. I gave up after first chapter or two, just because it was too much of just a blizzard of stuff. And I just like, okay, actually at the beginning, I make fun of the meat and potatoes aspect of the West Beyond the West, but actually that's what I needed, at least for a beginner reader, into the history of the province. And then maybe now is the time to go back if I didn't get rid of it. No, I didn't get rid of it. I could go back to something a little bit more individualistic, a little bit more idiosyncratic, like George Bowring's BC, which, I mean, it says it on the cover, Bowring's BC. So I'm not gonna. That is going to be much more a novelist, poet's idea of British Columbia versus a kind of an actual academic historian, which is what Jean Barman is. She's a professor of, well, got the sticker over top of it, but she's a professor. But she's a professor who can write, which is awesome. Write clearly and fairly straightforwardly, which I do appreciate in my histories, and in a way that didn't bore me too much. There's some things of like, how the mining, how the forestry is going, all our staple industries, which it's never going to be, it's like, it's important stuff. My God, this is how we exist economically as a province, but it's never going to really, float my boat. That there's a reason why silly news stories can sometimes get far more traction than the really actual important ones, because they have a tendency to be dry in a way that, is tough. This one definitely alternated chapters between kind of meat and potatoes, more dry history, and more kind of like the social cultural history, which is probably far more what I'm interested in than what would, I guess, be kind of economic and material history, which, I mean, it's a resource province, and that is important. We go through our booms and busts. Our fate is tied to the world economy and the world markets, and when the world markets don't want our stuff, that has a giant impact on this province, and has since the beginning it was created. It does a good job of sort of illustrating kind of the diffidentness of British Columbians to the rest of Canada, the isolation, but also just how our orientation is much more to the south and into the Pacific itself, and less focused on what's going on in Ottawa and stuff like that. And I mean, that's something that's not unique to other provinces, Alberta, Manitoba, things, but we definitely have that coastal thing. We have a huge population of people from Asia who have made their homes here that we've treated really shitty, but are actually more integrated into our society now. And it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to read. It'll be interesting to read her later book on just sort of because she does rightly, even in the West Beyond the West, kind of identify that the big things, like, it's being a company, big corporation, a province where the corporations have been encouraged and are a huge part of a controlling part of our lives, and our unwillingness and our structural incapacity, it seems, to come to some kind of proper, fair, equitable agreement with the native peoples in our province, and how much that is possible. Is a big vexing question that, it was not solved then, even though Barman sort of sometimes sounds optimistic about it then, speaking as someone who's now looking back at it from, almost 30 years ago. It's like, yeah, you might have been optimistic, but things did not get done. did not get done, and we're still working, still in the baby steps of that, it seems. While there has been some shifts, and yeah. Okay, so that is the West Beyond the West. I am very happy to have that behemoth. It's not well, it's a history book, so it's like, you know, I'm whining. It's 369 pages long. I'm sure that would be like a blink in the eye of someone who's really reads a lot of nonfiction. I don't, and that it's a textbook is probably another thing of just like, it does not have that narrative structure that I'm so used to, and that does carry me through. But I did it. And then, so hopefully that'll be a part of a basis for further stuff. Maybe more nonfiction from about British Columbia, you know, the Bowring or other stuff, and also fiction from British Columbia. I already recorded a little thing on here talking about, maybe I should, I've kind of, there's a list of like, of some BC authors in here, and it's like, I should come up with more, and just trying to add that into my reading pile, just to kind of further my knowledge, further my understanding of the place where I live. Yeah, I will leave it there. More videos later.